Welcome to Jodi's Voice, where we challenge mindsets and inspire greatness. I'm Jodi Samuels, the founder of Jodi's Voice, and I am on a mission to change the world. I know that I cannot change the world, but I can change my world in my way. I wear many hats. I'm a speaker, I'm an author, a not-for-profit leader, an inclusion activist, a mom, and a wife. And I recently published my book, Chutzpah, Wisdom and Wine, The Journey of an Unstoppable Mom, available on Amazon. Jodi's Voice presents series where we try and get our participants and listeners to question, to think, and yes, to challenge their mindsets. This series for Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month is getting people to really think about inclusion. What does it mean? Why does it matter? And how can we make our society a more inclusive society? Some of our guests have included Rabbi Rafi Feuerstein from the Feuerstein Institute, a visionary and inclusion activist his whole life. Beth Steinberg, a parent and mom who runs an inclusion organization and has really been changing the world of inclusion. Slavi Wolf, a famed Torah teacher who teaches us not about special needs from the point of view of the person, but what can you do if you weren't that person challenged with special needs? How can you make the world more inclusive? And we have Richard Bernstein, the blind judge, a Supreme Court judge in Michigan. And today's guest is a personal friend and someone that I admire. And I believe Orly Wahba and I connected because we share one mission. We really want to make the world a better place. Orly is the founder of a global not-for-profit called Life Vest Inside. She's in fact an expert in kindness. She's an author, an educator, and she sold a best-selling book. She's an entrepreneur, a keynote speaker. But what does Orly really do? She inspires audiences to grow, to institute change in their life. She motivates people to influence the world for better. And she inspires to utilize kindness. Kindness, something such an underutilized skill in our world. Through her powerful programs and her organizations and her speaking engagements, including flash mobs, classes, events, she helps change the perspective of kindness. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Orly, and I'm going to ask Orly two burning questions I have for Orly. So Orly, I want you to tell me, why do you believe kindness is so powerful? Why have you dedicated your life to the mission of kindness?
First of all, I just want to say that I'm honored to be here, and I thank you for such a beautiful introduction. To me, kindness is not actually my end game. A lot of people say, oh, kindness must be your end game. Really, empowerment is my end game. To empower people to recognize their value, that they're unique, that they're significant, that even though they might be 1 in 7, 8 billion people in this world, the number that matters the most is that they're one. Now we each have something that we can bring into this world to make the world a better place. Why do I utilize kindness? Why is kindness the greatest tool to empower a person to recognize their value? So the way that I sort of explain this is, there are many different social issues going on in today's world. We know this, many different social issues. And so many people approach these issues from the anti-approach, from the negative perspective. What do I mean by that? So if there's, for example, if there's war, people are talking about anti-war. If there's depression, anti-depression, bullying, anti-bullying, utilizing negative language to fight against something that's negative that's going on. But that just doesn't work. This is not like a math equation. Negative times negative, doesn't give you positive. The real question that we need to ask is, well, why does that issue actually exist? To keep asking why? To find where it stems from. And when we continue to ask the question of why, what we find is that it stems from a lack of self-value and self-worth. People not recognizing that, in fact, that who they are matters. It's my belief that, unkindness doesn't exist because people aren't kind. It exists because they don't actually recognize their own power, their own value. I always say, imagine there's a pole, a jagged metal pole sticking out of a wall, okay? And it's in a really narrow corridor. And there are people that are walking by this pole every day and cutting their leg, and they're just gushing blood. And on the other side of a pole is a guy there putting Band-Aids on the people's leg. Forget the Band-Aids. Just cut the pole off of the wall. So many times we try to approach a problem by putting a Band-Aid once it's an issue, as opposed to asking, well, why did it come to existence in the first place? Why is it there? So what I found is that one of the greatest things that we are facing, the issues that we're facing as a society, is that we don't recognize our value. We don't recognize that our voice matters. And if we don't recognize that our voice matters, therefore our actions don't matter. But if we can simply empower people to see how amazing they are, the fact that if you're here, you have air in your lungs, you're breathing, there is something that you're meant to bring into this world that nobody else can. We are each like a piece of the puzzle. And if you think about a puzzle, okay, so imagine, Jodi, you have a 1,000-piece puzzle and you're working on this puzzle. You come to the end and you're missing a piece. The likelihood is you're not going to take that puzzle and go and spend the money to get it framed and then hang it on your wall. It's missing a piece. This is the essence. What does that mean? We're all different pieces of the puzzle. And if you look at puzzle pieces, no piece is bigger or smaller than the other. They're different shapes, different colors. They're placed in different areas, but every single piece is the same size. Every one mattering to the beauty of this eventual picture that we put together. And that's why I believe that kindness is so essential. Why? Because when a person is engaged in an act of kindness or an act of giving, think about something that you've done for somebody that's made them smile, right? And it's simple things, it's not these larger than life things. It's the simple things that we do. How do we feel when we are engaging in an act of kindness? We feel awesome. Not only do we feel awesome, and there's scientific evidence behind this, it increases our level of endorphins, of oxytocin. It lowers our cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone. But what else? When you're engaging in an act of kindness, when you make somebody else smile, in that moment, you're being validated for the right reasons, as opposed to what society tells us should validate us. We're living in a world that we all look at these numbers, these fake facade numbers to give us validation. How many followers we have, how many people like us, right? How much money you have in the bank. But these things, even though a person might have all the greatest numbers out there, they could be going to bed at night crying themselves to sleep, because the only person that can validate you, that can give you the validation, is actually you yourself. But when you engage in an act of kindness or an act of giving, when you breathe life into another person and you see the reaction that they have, suddenly you recognize that all you needed to do to make a difference in the world is just be you. That's it. You didn't have to be the smartest or the funniest or the wealthiest or the most popular person to make a difference. You just needed to be you. And it's my belief that if we can empower people to live their best selves, to actually live to their potential and stop comparing themselves with others, but to actually look at the person, looking at them in the mirror and recognize, wow, that person's awesome. Think about the amount of progress that we can create, the more innovations that we will have. If people actually realize that they are another piece in the puzzle and everybody else's piece is just as important, when you see that you matter, suddenly you don't just see a person for who they are, how they look, or what they believe, or a disability that they may have. You see them for who you see them for their essence. And you recognize that each and every person is yet another piece of this beautiful, larger than life puzzle.
Wow, Orly, thank you for that perspective. And I think we so live in a society that we've just learned to be politically correct. Instead of celebrate diversity, celebrate challenges, yes, celebrate change. And it's exactly your point that we don't even hear our voice, we don't even hear our voices. We don't even know what we're worth. And I'm going to ask you this because you've somewhat touched on it, but it's a really touchy subject for me and a lot of parents who have children with disability. I know that I actually have a knee-jerk reaction to the word kindness. And I actually wrote a blog saying why I hate kindness, which was one of my most popular and shared blogs in the special needs world ever. Why do I hate kindness? Because I think that people sometimes just use kindness as a stopgap to make the giver feel good and not necessarily thinking about the person on the other side. And, I don't want someone to tell me like, oh, your daughter, she's matuka, she's sweet, she's cute, she's 12 years old. A dog is cute, a dog is sweet. I don't want, that makes you feel good. Or when Kayla was born and people dropped gifts off, like, my other kids, I never got gifts, and people dropped off $100 onesies at my doorman. I mean, they never came to see me or talk to me or see how I was feeling. Somehow it made them just feel so much better that they dropped their like offering off. And I know that people mean well, like on a superficial level, they're trying to make me feel better, but all these organizations, they'll host people with special needs in their home and write out a check and like tick, and then never ever see these people ever again. Or chesed projects at school where the kids are taught to like tick, we did our chesed.
Yeah.
So
Just
maybe
a check.
You could talk about this and say, how do we as a society change it from just being to make this bridging gap rather than just a feel good for the giver?
Well, I got to tell you, you're speaking my language, because I feel very, very much the same way. People misunderstand this word of kindness. They look at kindness as an action. Nobody's ever done kindness. Avraham Avinu was known as Ish HaChesed, the man of kindness. But I have to tell you something. He never did kindness. No, he never did kindness. He lived kindness. Kindness is not something you tick off of a, checkbox. Yes, I'm kind on Mondays and on Fridays from 4 to 5. You missed me. I'm sorry. You need to make an appointment. I may be available next year. No. We tend to, even in hours in school, right? They have these chesed projects. And what do they have kids do? They have to do chesed hours. They have to do kindness hours. What kind of a situation is this? What's going on over here? What are we really teaching when we say that? We're saying, okay, this hour you're going to be kind, but the next hour you're not going to be kind. I mean, a lot of people associate it with, I'm going to go to a soup kitchen, or I'm going to go visit an old age home, and suddenly I'm kind. It doesn't work that way, because that same person that maybe went to go visit the soup kitchen, and I'm not putting down those actions. They're very nice. They're very beautiful. But that does that represent that a person themselves is kind? Because kindness is the way in which you see the world, and it begins in the way in which you see yourself. So if you have a person that's going and volunteering somewhere, but then they walk right out, or they're in that place and they give somebody a look up and down that makes that person feel like garbage, is that person kind? I mean, is that really what we think kindness is? So we need to be able to shift our perspective. We can no longer look at it. It cannot be looked at as an action, or as, yes, I'm kind because I volunteer or because I'm donating. That's not kindness. Kindness is, how do you look at people? How do you see people? But like I said, the true way to get to a life of kindness is asking, how do you see yourself? If you love you, if a person truly loves themselves, I'm not talking about arrogance, because arrogance and confidence are two diametrically opposed things. They look the same sometimes, but they are completely opposite. If you really love you with your flaws, and we all have flaws and we all make mistakes, suddenly you're now open, you're free. You're free to love other people for who they are, for what they believe, for how they look, for how they think, for whatever it may be, because you recognize that we are all different. We all have our insecurities. We all have our, mistakes that we make. You have this ability to recognize that just like I'm different, this person is different. We're all different. And by the way, we're supposed to be different. We have to be very careful, because sometimes when we talk about, let's say, even inclusivity, we sometimes can be so inclusive that we're actually become exclusive. What do I mean by that? If we're only going to accept people that believe how we believe, are we truly inclusive? I mean, are we? If we only accept, because we have to realize, even, we might think that something is right, but at the end of the day, there are going to be people that have different thoughts or different ideologies or different belief systems. To truly be inclusive means you are secure in who you are. You recognize who you are, and now you could start to recognize that each and every person is also their own person, and they have their own way of approaching something. And at the end of the day, that is okay. But like I said, I mean, I believe that we first have to recognize what kindness means, that it is not necessarily an action. How, and the way in which we see other people, how does this connect? If we begin to see a piece of ourselves in someone else, the way in which we engage with them is going to be very different. And that's really the key, to see people, to really see people. When I say see people, it means that when you're looking at them, you actually see a part of you in that person. And so the way in that you engage with them is very different. You're not looking at them as though, oh, I feel so bad for them, so I'm going to be nice. No, you recognize you also have those misgivings within yourself. And what you see in them is you see a piece of yourself. And so the way in which you're treating them is the way in which you wanted somebody to treat you. And that doesn't come from a place of pity. Kindness isn't about taking pity on somebody. Kindness is recognizing that we are all experiencing life in our own way and being able to embrace people. Not embracing them because they're different or because of this or because of the other thing, or maybe because they have a disability. It's actually embracing them because you see something in them. You see that spark in them, just like you have a spark in you. And we all do. That's, to me, that's the beauty of this world. We all bring something different to this puzzle of this world, each and every one of us. And if we can recognize that the fact that we're here, that we're alive, there's no extra superfluous person in this world, right? It's not like, oops, create an extra person. That was a mistake. No, every person has something that they're meant to give. And if we can recognize, wow, that person is yet another piece of my puzzle, we are all interconnected. We are all intertwined. And if anything, this past year of COVID has taught us is that the actions of one person can really have far-reaching impacts on others. That what we do, that what one person does, we are all so much interconnected. If we can realize that, the same like a body, right? If you cut your finger, you don't only feel pain in the finger, you feel not good all over. We are all interconnected. Nobody's going to say, okay, well, I'm just going to get rid of that finger. I'm not going to look at that finger. We have to embrace everyone for who they are, but we have to shift the way in which we're looking at them. Because we cannot be looking at people from a place of I'm above and they're below. No, we're all the same. We all make mistakes. We all have insecurities. That's our one commonality, the thing that unifies each and every one of us, irregardless of anything else.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so I so thank you for challenging people's mindsets today, because I don't think most people think of kindness like that. And I wish we could hear more from you. But I'm quite sure, Orly, tell them your website so they can hear more about your website.
100%. I would say you can find out more about the organization by going to lifevestinside.com. You can also check us out on our social media, all of that at lifevestinside.com. And the concept behind Life Vest Inside is that your greatest strength is inside of you. Once you begin to see it in you, you'll naturally begin to see it in others. And kindness will then emerge in a natural way, not in a forced way, not in a fake way, not in a facade way. It's actually you're going to be living kindness through and through.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And this entire series will be available on Jodi's Voice on Facebook, Jodi's Voice on Instagram. And you can also find a copy of my book, Chutzpah, Wisdom and Wine, on Amazon as an ebook or as a print copy. Stay tuned, and we'd love to see more of you from Jodi's Voice. Thank you.